My name is Denise Saint Arnault, and I'm an associate professor at University of Michigan. And I want to tell you a little bit about the clinical narrative ethnographic interview that I developed to help people explain their recovery journey. So in order to explain this instrument, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about why we're using it in trauma recovery. And then I'll tell you a little bit about the details of the instrument itself. So the problem in recovery in general, and cultural differences in recovery and trauma recovery, is that many people never tell anyone about their suffering. They don't tell people for a variety of reasons. The biggest one is stigma, but there's other reasons too, internal reasons. They are afraid that people will think they're weak or somehow helpless. They worry about what people will say about them, what people will do if they explain their situation. So the rates of actually seeking help for any kind of mental health suffering or trauma recovery is extremely low. And we can see rates from between maybe 2% of people who've suffered this way, trauma recovery maybe, all the way up to maybe 25%. And even 25% is extremely low. So in order to understand their internal reasons for not explaining what's happening for them, and to motivate people to seek help for their recovery or their trauma recovery, I developed an instrument that helps a person explain the full story of their suffering and make decisions about if they want to seek help and how they want to seek help and why they should seek help. I created this instrument from the framework of narrative interviewing. And narrative interviewing, I think, is a helpful approach because constructing a narrative is the way that a person communicates their needs to someone else. And so the narrative lens or the narrative framework reminds us to ask certain kinds of questions so that the person can explain a whole story from beginning to end. So just briefly, the elements of a narrative include situations that have happened, people in those situations, the feelings that I had during those situations, what I believe caused that situation, what the situation means to me, and then what am I going to do about that situation. So the clinical narrative ethnographic interview systematically guides the person through through detailed explanations about each of these components of a narrative. And completing the clinical ethnographic narrative interview, or the ceni, I'll call it the ceni, completing this whole interview helps a person have a complete experience of telling a story from the beginning to the end, and then make some decisions about what they want to do about that situation. The other issue or condition for creating an interview like this is that it, in my mind, has to be transcultural. It can't contain cultural beliefs or values or prompts. Otherwise, we're framing a person's story for them through our cultural lens. So when I was developing the interview protocol, I tried to find ways to create an experience that would be completely open, that way, from any culture, from any walk of life, you can answer these questions, and it won't bias the interview or the person's story by injecting one cultural worldview. So the ceni does not rely on logic. It does not rely on a clear, rational flow. Instead, it uses small, segmented activities that allow a person to draw forward, maybe into the light, something that maybe is sometimes hidden from them, something they never really talked about before, thought about before. So that's the value of it, is people find out things about themselves they didn't realize, they didn't even know. So the ceni includes 4 interactive activities. And from my experience, the ceni has to be done in a certain order so that the person can have a complete experience. So one way to think about the ceni is it starts external. It starts with the social world, and then it moves into the body, and then it moves across time, and then it moves into an individual experience. And in that individual experience, people have lots of discoveries. So specifically, the ceni begins with a social network. And in the social network, the person depicts their social world any way they want. So you'll see some drawings here of some sample social networks. In the social network, we talk about use of social support, and we also talk about conflicts or people who you're avoiding in your social world. And in the ceni, then, we take that social network and we sort of set it aside within view of the participant so they can refer to it at any time during the interview. The next activity is moving from the external to the internal, and we do that with a body map. And the body map is a figure, and it's got a front and it's got a back, and we ask the person to depict how they feel right now on the body map. And people will draw words, and they'll draw pictures, and they'll circle places that hurt, and they'll draw beautiful radiant hearts of love, and they'll show pictures of God. They draw all kinds of things on this body map. Again, the body map is set aside within view of the participant, and now they have their social world and their body. The next activity is the Lifeline. And the Lifeline is in some ways the centerpiece of the interview. It includes, the Lifeline is simply a line on a piece of paper, and it begins with birth and it ends with now. And above the line are times when a person felt safe, secure, happy, had pleasant memories. And below the line are times when a person felt unsafe, insecure, threatened, sad, bad in some way. And a person can construct this lifeline any way they want. A lot of people write ages, and they often write, some high points, school or getting married, having children, feeling competent, good friends, lovers. And on the bottom, people will write negative things, losses of family members, being hurt or abused in some way, failures in school, car accidents, surgeries, all kinds of things on the bottom. And it takes around a half hour for a person to talk about their lifeline, and they explain some of these events, and the rest of the interview is about the most recent low point. Now, the most recent low point might be anything. It could be loss of a job, it could be an argument with a friend, it could be anything. but the most recent low point is the focus of the rest of the interview. Again, we put the lifeline on the table within the view of the person. We focus on the most recent low point, and we do this with cards. So we have a stack of cards that have emotions and physical feelings on them. There's about 46 cards, and we ask the person to sort these cards by what was true of them during that low point and what wasn't true. So first they make 2 piles, and then the pile that was true of them, we ask them to organize those in any way they want. So they organize the cards in clumps. Maybe it's, these are all the physical feelings, these are all the emotional feelings. These are what I felt before the event, these are what I feel now. These are the times that were really serious, and these were the light problems that I had. They can organize them any way they want. And the rest of the interview, we just talk about, what are these feelings? What do they mean to you? What do they mean about you? And what do you do for them? What do you want to do for them? And what do you want to do going forward in your healing? So the interview takes about an hour and a half. People describe the interview as very comprehensive, very enjoyable, extremely interesting. A lot of people have a lot of epiphanies or awarenesses about themselves that they never saw before. They often sort of, what we say, connect the dots. They connect the dots between their social world and their body and their lifeline and their cards. And the goal is self-awareness and feeling empowered to take your healing into your own hands and make your recovery journey the best that it can be.